Hello and welcome to EPR with your favorite environmental nerds, Nic and Laura. On today's episode, Nic and I discuss the show. We talk to Nicolas Holm about GIS tools, following your passions, and being an adrenaline junkie. And finally, lunar moths do not have a mouth. They live for 7 days and slowly starve to death. Oh. During this time, males frantically fly long distances to mate with females. Once females lay eggs, they die. Oh. So live free and die hard. Wow.
I have to say, though, the reason I brought this up is because when I was reading about it, it said males had to fly long distances to meet with females if necessary. And I love the idea that they meant that. I know they meant that for distance, but what it reads as is like mating if necessary. You know, it's not really, you have 7 days to live. You live your life how you want to. You could make babies, but you know what? It's your life. So that's the message I want to get across.
I can't imagine a life without eating. That's the sad part to me.
It's kind of wild. Yeah, they literally they have no
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Anyway, hit that music.
Registration is now open for NAEP's next Advanced NEPA workshop on Wednesday, November 9 from 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. These workshops are intended to provide participants with practical tips and tools about how to refine preparation and review of the environmental documents prepared pursuant to the National Environmental Policy Act. Check it out at www.naep.org. 60% of listeners have bought something from a podcast ad. We are up to over 25,000 downloads with over 400 per episode. If you'd like to sponsor the show, please head on over to www.environmentalprofessionalsradio.com and check out the sponsor form for details. We will appreciate you immensely as you keep the show going. Laura wrote that. Let's get to our segment. How we met. It was a starry night. Yeah, I thought it was funny because it's just like we've talked about it a little bit on the show before. Chemistry is something that you can't fake it. It's very real, very, very hard thing to get. And if you have it, you have it, and it's pretty fun. I'm just glad it worked. I remember being like, okay, I guess I'll do this thing with this Laura person, whoever she is. And then, yeah. And then I really should find the clip. I think I still have it somewhere where I'm like, is that an Against Me t-shirt? And I'm like way too excited about it. It's just.
I know. I remember your face. It was great.
Yeah.
I don't really remember anything else about it.
Which is not a slight at me. She just doesn't remember stuff, guys. That's the honest.
Yeah, which you know now.
Yeah, right.
1,000 times over that I don't remember things. But it is nice. What is this? A year and a half later? Almost 2 years.
Yeah. Almost 90 episodes. We're gonna hit 100 here in another couple months. So
that's right. 2 years.
Oh, that's crazy.
I'm ready for the next bloopers episode.
I knew you were going to say that. I'm dreading it. It's no fun. It is hard to do. The end result's great. And we also haven't had any outtakes in the most recent episodes, actually. But we have plenty. There's plenty now. I've got 30 files to sift through. So, yeah, don't worry.
Yeah. At least, we've got, Sam, the new volunteer, can help you. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but there might be more Nick-centric ones as a result, actually. So maybe I don't want her to be in charge of finding bloopers.
I think there's just going to be naturally more Nick bloopers anyhow.
Interesting. Why do you say that? So we'll have a Kara homage segment as well.
Oh, for sure. We need a Kara homage and a podcast homage.
Oh, yeah, man. Big changes for the pod this year. My goodness.
Right?
But there's I don't know, we can spend some time talking more about what we want to do, I think, for this year too.
Yeah.
For the coming.
Yeah, sorry. I know we cut each other off sometimes.
We've never done that. Not one time.
I hear people will I'll just be listening or someone will be talking about something and oh, I'm going to start a podcast, or they're like, oh, I'm going to, me and my friend are going to do this thing. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Sure. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if people realize how hard it is to do this every single week. And if you're not like you said, have the chemistry.
Because that makes that part easy, right? Because then there's other challenging things. Editing's, takes time, and coming up with people, finding people, asking questions, coming up with the questions to ask.
Oh yeah, I'm still amazed that you find the time to edit these things.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, it helps that you enjoy it.
Yeah, it's you can put up something. You can put like something on TV and mindlessly, or like music. I mean, you can put music on and mindlessly do it. It's kind of fun. And you'd be like, oh, I don't know. It's weird to be like, I can take out an entire sentence that someone said, and it will seem like they never said it. I don't know. That kind of.
Oh, see, like the playing God syndrome. Like,
yeah, kind of. Really yeah. Are you surprised? Come on, it's not.
No, not really.
No, but no. I mean, joking aside, it is pretty fun though. It's a cool thing to see the end result, right? You get end result. It's hard to do in our business sometimes, and I guess wow, look at me going right into a segment because your projects are long. There's long-term projects. You don't see the end result for later. Quite some time. But this is instant gratification. So I like that.
I know, but you also you need the chemistry, or if you don't have that, you can just host by yourself, I guess. But even then, I don't know if I was hosting by myself, I'd feel the obligation to show up every week,
Right. Yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
But you also have to enjoy the work part of it. I like looking up the people and figuring out what we're going to ask them and stuff. And you like the editing. I won't even watch them, listen to them over. So there's no way that I could help or do the editing part.
Yeah. Well, I sound like an idiot here. Delete all of my work.
Right, exactly. It would end up being just Nic on here. So
it's just me, and there's just weird transitions. We were talking about whales. Why did it change? Yeah. I love it. But yeah, I don't know. That's the fun part of the show. And like I say, it is fun to, we talk about work a lot, but it is a lot of, you have to have fun just in general, right? So it's good to have a fun segment.
Yeah. It's been cool also, it helps that it's growing, and we know that we're hitting people all over the world. So that's cool.
Requests from people about stuff, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So hi, friends around the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anybody has a question or something, let us know.
I know. And it's something we kind of have been talking about, mulling over, is we want to try to get a field correspondent. I don't mean that literally. I mean someone that goes around and asks questions about field stories, and we can bring those in here as well. That would be really fun.
Yeah, I know, right? I feel like we're connected, and this is really great, and we connect well with our guests, but then there's the audience connection. I think we're at the point where I think that has a chance to really grow. Yeah,
exactly. And we're going to try to do a few things like that for everybody to get involved with this a little bit more. And it's pretty exciting. But that's why it's fun, right? There's always more and new things, and
Yeah, so all those Against Me fans out there that are listening.
Yes.
You're welcome on the team anytime. All right, I think that's a nice recap of our little history. So let's get to our interview.
Cool.
Welcome back to EPR. Today we have GIS mastermind Nicolas Holm on the show. Nicolas integrates data and creates platforms to save lives. He builds custom ArcGIS tools around climate change, world events, renewables, public safety, and is completely self-taught. So welcome, Nicolas.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, but also an honor and a privilege to be speaking with you and sharing, a layer of my professional life.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you here. As we talked about, we're always striving to encourage more inclusivity in the industry. And part of that is providing opportunities for people who can't afford, or just maybe, quite frankly, don't want to go to a traditional educational track like others. And so we really appreciate you being here and being an example for one of those alternatives. So first question, how did you, or when did you first realize you had a passion for GIS?
Well, 3.5 years ago, I was working with drones and doing thermal inspections, and we needed to map a building to scope out a site beforehand. So I made my first map, and I integrated at that time, the built-up environment, so buildings, and it led to parcel boundaries, and then I brought in weather layers, and then it just kept on growing, and I just started bringing in increasingly more layers and complexities. So that's how it started. And then I wanted to push the boundaries of ArcGIS to see, can this thing handle traffic? So I built a 3D tool that has 120 cities fully built with infrastructure and vegetation. And I posted it, and it hit thousands of clicks from all over the world simultaneously, and it worked. So it gave me confidence to keep on building increasingly more complex platforms. And then it went towards solution-based and world events and truthfulness. All of the data is up for grabs. If you understand just basic principles of REST endpoints and WMSs, you can connect to everything. And these capabilities are growing every single day. So GIS is like almost a form of, wizardry.
Yeah. So you said that was just 3.5 years ago. So what were you doing prior to that?
Oh, I wasn't ready for that question. Well, I worked in cryptography. I was in mobile cryptography, developing software in voice encryption in BlackBerry Enterprise, encrypted BlackBerry. I've always been self-taught, and I've been an entrepreneur, all my life.
Yeah. So can you speak to that a little bit? Like, I think some people listening, even myself, I'm self-taught in a lot of areas too. How do you learn to learn? That's not, even that is a skill that some people don't readily have. So where did you said, I want to do this. And then how did you take the next steps to make it happen?
It comes from a genuine curiosity. So I think that it starts with that. It starts with really wanting to understand and thinking it through, and then seeing what I need to learn to be able to deliver what I'm trying to accomplish, so I'm trying to build. So it starts with a lot of questions, and then a lot of trial and error, and a willingness to fail. And then somehow through that, I see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Awesome. So if I wanted to jump off this call and go improve my GIS skills, where would you recommend I would go next? Would I watch some YouTube videos, or would I download the software and just start playing? Like, what do I do to self-teach myself that?
Well, definitely sign up for an ArcGIS developer's account and then start inside that world to see, pick something that is of interest to you. And then through that, if you find something that's of interest to you, then you're going to want to delve into it deeper. But at the same time, my way of doing is really quite different, because I don't click on every single drop-down menu to try to understand what it does. I work backwards, and I have like a real technical issue that I'm trying to resolve. So now my motivation is real because it's a real world thing. So tackle things that are important to you, and then it will drive you to want to create.
Okay, awesome. I get that. And okay, so this was a project when you first were doing the GIS, was a project that you already had, and then you just added this onto it. So it wasn't like you had to start saying, I'm a GIS person, and go out and try to get work in the area.
I really didn't start out in GIS at all. Yeah. So I just started out where I built a map, and then through time I built a network. Through that, I built like so many different tools. I mapped COVID, for example. So I mapped the COVID flight paths out of Wuhan at the onset of the pandemic. It was at the end of November, beginning of December 2019. I posted a video on YouTube in February 2020. And there were 600 deaths in that video. And my first dashboard started out with 100 cases. And then when the war broke out in February in Ukraine, I was overwhelmed with compassion, but also like helpless emotion. So I thought, what can I do to help? So I read that Google had deactivated their location services, but Esri had not. Mm-hmm. So I built an escape tool with real-time traffic and routing capabilities that required no login. And that for me was a technological feat in itself.
Oh, yeah.
And the tool was clicked over 20,000 times. It was reshared over 60 times. And I received dozens of messages from Ukrainians in Ukraine, on the front lines, and abroad thanking me. Wired magazine reached out, and they asked me questions about the tools.
That's awesome.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Wow.
You know,
I mean, how did you even get the idea? I mean, it's brilliant, but how does that idea even pop into your head? How did you take action so quickly? Because that's not easy. That sounds really complicated.
well, looking backwards, it felt complex, but in all truthfulness, none of it is. Nothing I do is difficult. It's very simple. And it's initially, there might be some complexity for me to understand it. But really, when I look at what I'm actually doing, it's very, very easy to do. And when you have a motivation to want to like really help people, somehow it brings out the best in you and it brings out a strength in you. Like when I found out about the abortion ban in the US, the Supreme Court had overturned Roe versus Wade. So in response, I mapped all the abortion clinics to help those in need find a clinic. It had the information about the clinic itself, the telephone numbers and address, and then the status by state, and even the contact information of the senators in each of those states. Very recently, I built a tool on the Amazon basin that counts fires, and I built another one in Ukraine as well, to get a sense of what's actually going on a day-to-day. 3 weeks ago, millions of people were suddenly homeless in Pakistan. So, of course, I had to map that flood. And then that tool hit thousands and thousands of views and many reshares. And the reshares had links to organizations where people could make donations. So it was like wonderful to see that it had created that action. And, sometimes the work that I do shocks people. So when the war broke out, I mapped the war in Ukraine in great detail with live data. And not everyone agreed to making all of that information so easily available. And then later I mapped all the minerals in the Arctic, the diamonds, the gold, the oil, and then certainly people were not necessarily
Yeah. How do you use live data, and like where is the data coming from? Like in Ukraine, for example.
Well, if it's aviation traffic, that we're mapping, so like live planes, there is a lot of open source intelligence data that's out there and available if you have the toolkit to grab it and then map it. So all of the information is there, like everything is up for grabs.
That's really interesting. And we hear you talk about, building tools. And, like I say, you've done this over 2,000 times for all kinds of projects, not just what we've talked about here, but, defense, public safety, oceans, hydrology, the list goes on and on and on. Can you give us an idea of what building a tool is versus building a map? I mean, obviously they both give you different amounts of data, but kind of walk through the process for making a map versus making a tool.
Certainly. So the map precedes the tool. So all tools are built from a map, from an initial map. So if you pick something simple, like the Amazon forest, the Amazon basin, so you start with a blank map, you create the outline of the Amazon basin, and then you'll connect to a NASA feed through Esri of the live reading of the fires. And now you have mapped the live fires in the Amazon basin. And then with the software, you take it a step further, and then you convert that map into a web application where you need to bring in now the design elements so that the user interface is easy to use and also pleasing to the eye. And if there is any opening, sometimes what's more complex is to open the access so that people do not need to enter a username password to be able to access the tool.
Yeah, it's really neat. It's very fascinating. And this is an unfair question I'm going to ask you, but we talked a little bit about the projects that you've worked on, but do you have one that stands out as your favorite?
I would say the best is yet to come. The tool that I would really love to build and that I know how to do is to monitor all oil spills in all the oceans all at once. And with this level of knowledge, we could calculate total volumes of oils floating in the world, and then we could find the cause and the culprit to better understand and then act to save our oceans. That would be the tool that I would like to build the most. I'm working through these. I build these centralized intelligence platforms out of pure interest and self-motivation. I create platforms that cross-pollinate and they integrate and they leverage many existing technologies. And it's how I got, General Honore that I work with hooked on my work. And now he's got me mapping chemical negligence for the EPA and helping Louisiana Bucket Brigade and the Green Army. Just last month, my colleague Michael Nash, he's one of the greatest movie directors. He told me he wanted to interview Elon, who claimed that our population is collapsing due to low birth rates, and that it's actually a bigger problem to civilization than global warming. So I built a big tool, 100 layers plus, to shed light on that. And then, it shows that there's a steady climb of 1 billion people every 10 years. I'm working with the Big Wild on building a tool for ecological valuation. So developing a brand new methodology for identifying and putting a dollar value on areas that are rich in biodiversity and natural resources that we can and that we should be saving. I'm at the moment helping a humanitarian organization in Ukraine with real-time geospatial intelligence to help them secure goods that are destined for the Ukrainian people. I work very closely with the DiCaprio family, where I provide maps on many topics ranging from the Amazon deforestation to the intricate delta works that protect the Netherlands, that are helping the Netherlands battle against floods.
Just a couple boring projects.
Just a couple boring things. Yeah, no big deal. Leonardo DiCaprio. Yeah, it's no big deal. No, it's genuinely impressive. All jokes aside, it's absolutely impressive. I love that passion drives your work because that's something that is really, really important. And, I don't even know where to start. Let's see, if we go back to the dream, you mapping all the oil in the ocean. You have the concept, you have the idea. Are you in a pre-execution phase for the project? Do you need more information? Do you need better information? Or are you actually starting to dive into that?
Oh, I have the capabilities. So I've mapped through partnership with Orbital. So Orbital EOS, they provide data that shows the location of oil spills. And then I will take those shape files and then bring them into tools that model the ocean weather observations, for example, and then bring in the live vessels to see where the vessels are, and then all the advanced analytics to run calculations on that. So the tool is ready for demo. It has real world data.
Awesome.
It would be a wonderful tool to bring to life because it would raise our collective awareness that it is one ocean, it is one body of water, and to just brush it off if there's an oil spill along your ecological, if there's an oil spill within your economic zone, you will brush it off and you'll say, well, it'll just move further down the coast and it'll just hit Venezuela. And that's a mistake.
Yeah. I mean, it's really great work. I think there's a lot of fascinating pieces and projects that you work on. So we're going to have to just keep an eye out for Nicolas Holm Unlimited here, whatever we want to call it. But I think it's very fascinating.
Yeah, I think, it's nice to hear. I know that some people they get jobs in the environmental field, and then there's a level of hope when you first start your career. And then it's depending on what your job is, you may feel dissatisfied or underwhelmed by the impact that you actually get to make in your job. And it's nice to hear from someone who's making some really impressive tools that are making a difference immediately and in ways that you can see and feel and touch. I think that's not only great for you, but I think it's great for people to hear that these types of projects do happen and they're out there, and follow your passion and you can work on them too. But I was curious, these projects, how long does it take you to put something like this together? And then once they're done, you have 2,000 projects in the can, so to say. How are they maintained? Are you maintaining all of these? Do some of them, have a shelf life, so to say?
Well, some of them are, they will connect to servers that then for some reason go offline. So, sometimes I'll build built lots of things in hydrology and floods that are connecting to, let's say, a NOAA levee, and NOAA servers under service, so that levee is not in service, and I'm not aware of that. Other times I will copy and then take work that was done by a university researcher, and then for a reason unbeknown to me, they will take their work offline. So that might be a reason that it would cause one of the layers to go offline. But generally speaking, I tap into very robust systems so that they never go down. That's the idea.
Yeah, nice. So sort of live data that kind of keeps itself updated.
Yeah.
It's services, and also services. There's an incredible amount of information that is readily made available by the best organizations in the world. So NASA wants you to access their data. FEMA, USGS, they all want you to access their data. So everyone, and what I do that's different is that I cross-pollinate and I integrate and I force all of these services and data points to speak to one another so that the user can look through all of this information and then make a decision based on that.
Nice. Very cool.
When you develop these, I'm sneaking in here. How much time does it take? Because when you say passion, I want people to understand that it's not like, oh, wouldn't it be fun if I decided to build a network of data that talks to each other? Like it has to take a lot of time.
It really depends on the tool. So let's say the population, I'll build a tool on population. It was quite intricate. It had 110 layers. It had maybe 10 different categories. So that's a kind of tool you can build in, let's say, 2.5 sittings. So 2 blocks of 10 hours. Beyond 10, 12, 14 hours at a sitting, then you become maybe not so productive. So 2-3 days, I would say, to build the tool on population. But a lot of what holds me back is the business side. So having authorization to do it, signing the NDAs that are required to do it, getting access, having the organization grant you access depending on what I'm trying to accomplish. That's what takes time. The business side takes a lot of time to develop. The data side is incredibly quick because, as I said earlier, nothing I do is difficult, which means that I just leverage what is existing and I connect what is existing. So that's a lot faster than someone who's actually building data from the ground up.
Fascinating. You mentioned the people that you worked with, and I was curious, you work with nonprofits and private companies or individuals like the DiCaprios. Are you coming up with ideas and approaching them, or are they coming to you with problems and looking for solutions?
I would say that once people meet me and they see what I do, it raises their level of understanding of what can be done. And because of their brilliant minds, so now they come back with a whole other set of questions. And then that interaction forces me to up my game and then do some research to see, okay, what can be achieved? What is possible? I think what I love about GIS is the fact that it forces me to think and not to take what I can say is you don't want to outsource your thinking and you need to do the thinking on your own and think of when you're building a map, you're starting out with a blank map. So that equates, that is similar to a blank mind. And now you will bring in the data of the individual data layers one at a time. So this passion is a discovery. So it's a discovery process of what exists, of what I can create, of what I can learn, and then ultimately what I can communicate and then what I can share.
Very cool. Are you getting to travel? You work remotely, I'm guessing. Do you get to visit the places where you're doing some of these maps and tools?
Well, I've been in this for 3 years and then we had COVID. So there was travel restrictions. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see where it will lead me next. But I really do love to travel. So I'm very, very open to that. So we'll see.
Yeah. Tell us about some of the places you've been.
Well, I was adopted in the Philippines. My mother was French. My father was Canadian. He worked as an immigration officer in Canadian embassies around the world. So I grew up in Rome and then in Athens. I lived 4 years in Athens and 2 years in New Delhi. I lived in Bangkok, in Paris, in Port-au-Prince. I was a little kid swimming in Port-au-Prince. And then in Victoria, and I now live in Montreal, but I've been from anywhere from Norway to the Maldives and then everywhere in between. So
That's awesome.
I definitely love to travel. It opens your mind and it allows you to spread your wings and then meet incredible people along the way. And it makes you very grateful and very humble as well.
Okay. So what's next on your list? What's the highest, someplace you haven't been yet?
Where I haven't traveled, where I would love to travel.
Yep.
Well, there's so many. There are many more places that I have not been than there I have been. But as I map real world events and I realize the instability, there is the political instability, the climate instability. You want to make sure that where you're going is safe because you want to have a good experience through your travel.
Yeah.
And so that's actually limiting the number of places that we would like to go. But I've never been to the Philippines. I was adopted very, very, very young. And I would like to go back to see where I am from and see that culture. I think that would be a worthy trip.
Very cool. Yeah, it would.
Yeah. One of the things that I hear you say, and I think this is such an important message, and I would love to get your thought on it, right? The idea of beginner's mind and expert's mind, right? So when you're an expert in your field, you have all of this knowledge, but all the knowledge you got is based on your framework, your ideas, your thoughts. And so your field of vision on a project goes from being very wide to very narrow, right? You're like, this is what I'm great at. This is what I know. And, I think the people that are really, truly inspiring have ways of reminding themselves to be a little innovative, be a little creative, stop looking at just the front and look left and right. How do you incorporate new perspectives into what you've been doing? Do you ever look back and say, I can do this process better, I can do it more efficiently? How do I do that?
I think that what I can actually do is very limited because I don't have all that GIS training and background, right? I don't know most of what the software can do. So in my limited field, in my limited view, what I can actually do concretely basically lays out the game of what I can accomplish. But I don't see the connection with travel since I have not really traveled in the last few years due to COVID, and I've been in this business 3 years.
I think, though, getting back to Nick's point about the expert mind versus the beginner's mind. Okay, so you mentioned that there's so much that can be done within ArcGIS, Esri tools, or other mapping tools. There are others that exist. And you can be an expert in just knowing how to do a thing. You don't have to be. And I think this could be very inspiring also for people who are like afraid to take on GIS because it feels like it's too much, because it is. When I learned GIS, it was very small. It was very easy to step into. Now you're stepping into something you almost need a degree for. So I think it's very inspiring to hear that, you can be an expert in just using the tool to do a thing instead of having to be an expert in all things Esri and GIS put together, if that makes sense.
You have to have a drive. It's based on that, based on wanting to build something. You use the software to find a way of building it. Now, because I work backwards and I specialize in web applications, my way of putting all of it together is very different than the way that someone would have had they taken Esri training. So not only I don't have a degree in geography, but I've never taken any Esri courses. So I've never taken any online courses, hardly read any manuals, didn't look at the videos. My point in saying that is it's not because I'm bright. It's because it's not that difficult if you know where to click. Yeah. And if you don't outsource your thinking and you think how to resolve it yourself, you will arise to very easy solutions, because really you are just connecting and integrating what has already been built. You're not building something new most of the time.
Well, what kind of advice would you have for somebody who was looking to get into like maybe this freelance style of work? I don't know if you'd call yourself a freelancer, but into that style of work where you're just problem solving for someone. Maybe you're really good at something and you're not wanting to go to college, but you want to just keep building on a skill that you do have. Do you have any advice for an earlier career person on what they should do?
Pick something that matters to many people, where what you can do can really help, because we're at a tipping point in our climate where we really must have all hands on deck. If not, it's going to be really catastrophic what people will face. So align your career choice with something that will deliver the greatest amount of value for the greatest number of people. And then you will make things click.
I love that.
I had to ask, too, you talk about work with the DiCaprio family. You mentioned doing something in the Amazon. What do you typically do with them? Is it specifically for the DiCaprios? Do you do this with lots of other people as well? Do you consider them clients, or are they something different than that?
Well, I work closely with George. So I had a meeting yesterday with George. George is Leo's father. So they work on various movies. So the idea is to bring GIS and data into visualization of movies. And then there's also like a friendship as well. But we're working on several projects with them at the moment.
Wow, that's really cool. One of the things we love about the show, one of the things we like doing with the show is not just talking to the person about what they do, but who they are, right? We speak to hobbies a lot. And sometimes that's pretty easy. People have one or two hobbies. But you seem to have a lot of different things that you really enjoy doing, which is really fun. You talk about intermittent fasting, wind baths, Tai Chi, mountain biking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. So what do you like to do in your free time when you're not working on saving the world?
I like to experience nature. I would say that would be on the top of the list. And that means riding my mountain bike. I ride my mountain bike a lot. And I'm a very reflective and spiritual person. So I do a lot of hot yoga, a lot of meditation on a very, very, very daily basis. It's also what helps me build better maps. But certainly I like adrenaline, so strong emotions. I've ridden, very big horses. I've done windsurfing in open sea, in storms.
Wow.
Whoa.
So when I,
Okay, wait. Open sea and storms. Yeah. How do you get out there? Do you go from shore or a boat?
You can go from shore. So I used to windsurf. I lived in Greece. So in Greece, lots and lots of wind and lots of waves. And I would sail out for an hour in one direction until I could no longer see land.
Oh my gosh.
It's actually, reflecting on it backwards now, it's a bit foolish because the winds change direction. And if they change direction, well, you're not going to be able to get back the way that you came. And if you cannot see land, you actually don't know where you're going. But that's a strong, I would say that's a good adrenaline rush. That's for sure.
I'm literally getting a panic attack at the idea of doing that, not just doing it. That's incredible.
Well, I took it a couple steps further. Not only I would windsurf for an hour beyond what I could see, but then I would ditch my equipment. So I would leave my windsurf and I would dive. And I grew up swimming, so I could dive quite deep and hold my breath for a long time. And I would dive as deep as I could. And when you're diving in open ocean, the sunlight, you can see where the sunlight can no longer reach the ocean floor. So it's black. And if you put yourself in a position, a natural position is across, because your arms will help you, stay, well, you're sinking, but stay afloat, if you wish to say. And that really puts you in your place. It makes you realize how small you are in this very, very, very big world. So that would be on the top of my experiences, I would say, would be that.
Wow. I don't want to try to compete with you or Megan Haney Greer.
Look, I had a very similar experience. I remember being at the beach in North Carolina, at a wave, and I'm doing body surfing all day long, no big deal. Then a slightly larger than normal wave comes, and it flips me upside down, cracks my entire back, and slaps me on the ground. And I had that same thought. You know what? The world's pretty strong. I am pretty weak. So you don't have to do that. But I'm glad that you did. That's really incredible.
Yeah. Tell me I want to hear about the horses.
Well, I lived in India, so I started horse riding in India, and that meant riding in the jungle, riding with, galloping as fast as you could gallop in every direction. I would ride with a friend, and we would chase peacocks. Peacocks they don't run in a straight line. So they run in a very zigzag pattern. So you cannot follow it with a horse. But then that would force the peacocks to lose their feathers. So then on our way back, we would walk in and just collect feathers. So I had to, develop a very, a very strong bond to horses, and then animals, and then all of life through that, I would say.
Very cool. I love horseback riding. But I have not done this in India in the forest chasing peacocks. That just sounds really cool.
Yeah. There's you have a really good sense of adventure, and that's really fun. Have you always been that way? Like as a kid, were you also doing these things?
Yeah, were you giving your adopted parents heart attacks?
I've always been unafraid of and very keen in exploring and discovering, and it put me in positions where I would face a cobra or quicksand or get stranded out at sea. So I got stranded out at sea in Sardinia. And lo and behold, they came to rescue me in a pedalo. So at this time, so there was no motorboat. So they did this. The rescue team was on a pedalo and bring me back to land. So I had no real concept of danger, but I certainly have now. So I have a desire to protect myself all the time. So I do a lot of skiing, a lot of mountain biking. I wear a lot of protective gear along the way.
That's so cool. I like how you were like casually like it was cobras, I was stranded, Yeah, that's really neat. Man, you have lived a really great life already. You still got plenty of time to go, but that's fantastic. But it's been great chatting with you. I wish I could say we have so many other questions. I wish we could chat longer, but is there anything you want to talk about before we let you go?
Well, I'd like to thank my LinkedIn network, that I view as an extended family. I'd like to thank Esri for their technology and their incredible technical support. Laura Cox, she's a movie producer that has supported my journey.
Cool.
And I would like to thank, George DiCaprio, Leo's father, for his experience and passion for life. And then, of course, General Nore for his strength and his guidance. But above all, I would like to thank my parents for their, undying love and support, and my son, Noah, that I am so proud of.
That's wonderful.
That's really wonderful. And thank you for that. Thank you for being here. And before we let you go, let everybody know where they can get in touch with you.
Best is to reach out on me on LinkedIn, send me a quick message, and I'll be very happy to engage with you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Nicolas.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you, Nick. Laura. Thank you, Laura.
That's our show. Thank you, Nicolas, for joining us today. Please be sure to check us out each and every Friday, and don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Bye.
See you, everybody.